The other thing we want to talk about at the start of the show this morning is perhaps we've seen the end of days for Diarmuid Connolly in a Dublin jersey. It's not entirely shocking, but Senan Connell has voiced what many people thought. He was at the launch of Air Sports Allianz League coverage yesterday and said that he doesn't expect him back in the Dublin jersey, that he hasn't heard anything about Connolly training with the team up to this point. And what's the exact quote?
From my own personal point of view, I can't see it. There's not much that comes out of the camp, but I find it difficult to see Diarmuid coming back into the panel now, and I haven't heard anything to the contrary. I'd love to see him back in the Dublin jersey. I think he's the most talented player, etc., etc. But Jim is ruthless. He is always looking forward. Brian Howard ended up taking his jersey last year and is doing a good job, and Jim will probably believe that he is covered there. He also goes on to talk about Jim Gavin's motto, which is, "There are no stars in this team. We will win with or without you." So, he kind of speaks about the idea that it's really going to be up to Jim Gavin here. Doesn't really mention whether or not he's got information on whether or not Diarmuid Connolly wants to go back in. Maybe he doesn't have that information, but certainly it seems to me that the birdies whispering in Senan Connell's ear are telling him that there is hesitancy on the part of Jim Gavin and his management team to invite Diarmuid Connolly back.
Yeah, I wonder, does it have to be an invite, or can you just show up? You probably need to be invited, do you?
Does Jim Gavin have like massive bodyguards on the door of Parnell Park, and it's like, nah, not tonight. Show me your All-Ireland medal from last year. No, you don't have them. Not tonight.
Yeah. Look, come on. Why won't you take him back? He took a year out. He comes back. Loads of people take years out and come back. It's already happened within that squad.
Twice.
Yeah.
Both players come back better than ever. That being said, they were much younger. Diarmuid Connolly turns 32 this year.
He doesn't look like a 32-year-old, doesn't play like a 32-year-old, doesn't have the athleticism of a 32-year-old.
And mentally, he will be hugely refreshed, I'd imagine, after last year. Just not being in the bubble of being a Dublin footballer in this city last summer would have helped him hugely. Also, he's Diarmuid Connolly. Like, he is one of the best footballers we've seen this century. He needs to be in whatever county he plays for, he needs to be in that panel, even if it is a Dublin panel that have got unbelievable strength and depth. Like, is he really the type of person who, if Jim Gavin sits down with him now and Jim says to him, "You're not in my plans currently for the starting 15, you'll probably make the squad if you work hard enough, and then we'll see about a starting 15 spot. Are you going to be happy with that, Diarmuid?" I can't imagine he's going to tell him to F off. Like, I'd say he'd be like, "Okay, fine, I'll fight for my way back into the team." He knows how sport works. Like, if he saw like Jack McCaffrey and Paul Mannion coming straight back into the squad a couple of years ago, and they were just automatically handed back their route into the starting 15 the way they were before they went abroad, he'd probably be a little bit pissed off at that too. So I'm sure Diarmuid Connolly understands the process that has to be undertaken here for him to get back into the Dublin squad, which is just working hard over the next couple of months. So I don't really understand why that opportunity wouldn't be afforded to him.
Are there any downsides to having one of the most luxuriously gifted footballers of his generation, or any other generation, in your team?
That's just putting it way too simply, obviously. There is...
I'm asking, are there any downsides? Explain the cons.
Well, that's just looking at it as Diarmuid Connolly, the footballer. Like, we don't know what sort of influence Diarmuid Connolly has within the squad. I'm trying to find the quote here, and Senan Connell says he doesn't want to call him a loose cannon. I should stress that. But he does mention the idea that Jim Gavin doesn't like the idea of a loose cannon in the squad. Now, again, Connell is not calling him a loose cannon, but anybody who might be construed to have a streak within them that could be disruptive to the harmony of the team, who doesn't just stand in line when asked to stand in line. Is that something that Jim Gavin wants when he's meticulously planned this thing to perfection so far?
I mean, I have to say, I think that's overstating things a little bit. Like, he wears a Leitrim hurling top because his brother played hurling for Leitrim, and people go, "Oh, Connolly's not wearing the same gear as everybody else." I think all of the Diarmuid Connolly stuff is massively blown out of proportion because...
How do you know?
He's the most luxuriously gifted footballer. Because how important is it that he wears a Leitrim hurling top, and why the hell do we know?
How do you know that that's the beginning and the end of the problem?
But why does that matter?
It's clearly not an issue. It's clearly not an issue what he wears.
It gets commented on in a way. It's like...
Okay, so if you think Jim Gavin is actually listening to what people are commenting on regarding Diarmuid Connolly with regards to not inviting this guy back into the panel,
I think...
then you've clearly got a wrong representation of what Jim Gavin is all about. If there is a reason why he doesn't want to bring Diarmuid Connolly into the squad, clearly something...
So what are you suggesting?
I would suggest that whatever Diarmuid Connolly... I don't want to say he had a disruptive influence on the panel, but I would say...
there's literally no evidence of that.
Because nothing gets out from the Dublin panel at all.
So you're
it's completely in the realm of speculation here.
Okay, exactly, right? And you can't speculate without actually knowing stuff. But all we do know is that anytime Connolly is involved in an incident, it gets massively blown out of proportion. Like, the lengthy suspension that he got that nobody else seems to get for minor interference with a linesman that effectively ends his Dublin career. It doesn't fully, because he comes back and plays in the All-Ireland final that year, and they need him in the All-Ireland final that year. That was a massive scandal that was parsed over on the Sunday game in a way that loads of other incidents, depending on who the player is, get brushed over.
But what does that have to do with the current situation? Jim Gavin stood up for him. Jim Gavin had a mini boycott of RTE because he felt the coverage was so unfair. He was on his side in that. This is completely different. I don't know what is the issue here, because if we take it just on the basis of him as a footballer, there's no question, even with one of the greatest panels we've ever seen in Gaelic games in Ireland, he has to be in that panel. So, like, there has to be another element here. Like, well, I don't know.
Well, I don't think there does have to be another element.
Or maybe
I think that there's too easy a trap when it comes to players like this, that everybody goes, he's a wrong and therefore everything he's ever done is bad, right? Because he becomes the focus of massive attention, and maybe some people don't want that attention around their team. And I just would like to state that I think that a lot of that stuff is bullshit, that there's the crappy Irish rumour mill that surrounds certain players.
Oh, completely. That's obviously not what I'm referring to here.
And so let's just separate that and go, stick them back. There's loads of people that require different types of management in any panel of the size and talent and skill sets that the Dubs have.
So why do you think he's not in the panel then?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking. I think that they should actually just stick him in and see what happens. Like, the loose cannon, the not loose cannon bits, I think it's too easy for people to go, that's what that is. Like, that's, we're just accepting that he's unmanageable somehow, which doesn't seem to be the case at all. It hasn't been the case when he became the best footballer in the country over the best part of a decade.
Yeah, my point here is that this idea about the tirade against Diarmuid Connolly a couple of summers ago, and I agree with you that the focus is magnified, is completely overblown. And most importantly, that's the sort of stuff that Jim Gavin really doesn't care too much about, particularly when it comes to choosing a player for his panel. Like, if there is some other reason here why Diarmuid Connolly's not going to be invited into the Dublin panel, maybe there is none. Like, I don't think it has anything to do with the idea that he caused a bit of a media furore a couple of years ago because he pushed a linesman and it got overblown because he's Diarmuid Connolly.
When you look at the comments from Jim Gavin last year, he said he really looks forward to Diarmuid getting back playing Gaelic games. Remember that?
Vaguely.
So he didn't specifically say we really look forward to him coming back and rejoining the Dubs panel. There was never the explicit expression that he will be welcomed back to the Dubs panel. I think I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that I remember the specific wording being very interesting about, we wish him all the well. We hope he's having a good time, getting a bit of a rest, and we really can't wait to see him back playing Gaelic games.
I'm just quite reluctant to take everything here on face value. That I'm not sure that we have all the information because of the fact that he is such a good footballer, and it doesn't matter how good that Dublin panel is or how settled that panel is last year. And to be fair, maybe Jim Gavin is kind of separate to the Diarmuid Connolly situation. Said to himself at the end of last year, "This is it. This is the panel. We're not bringing anybody new in for next year." Will we see any new faces? Like, the way he's operated so far is that there's always one or two new faces that come into the panel, so you'd expect there will be. There hasn't been a single retirement over the course of the winter is the only thing.
No, because there's 5 in a row on the line. No one's going to retire.
It seems to be a period of self-improvement from all angles, really. Like, Johnny Cooper cited in the newspapers this morning as, going to see the All Blacks train in Leinster and all that sort of thing, that everybody's looking for ways to make themselves better ahead of this 5 in a row. How does Jim Gavin make the squad better? Well, an automatic way to do it is add one of the generational talents into the squad. Yeah, maybe he feels that that's unnecessary.
Imagine there's a little bit of a bite in training the first night he's back. Imagine the difference. Everybody's a little bit on guard. Like, the defence, who have to now suddenly deal with him as opposed to very, very talented forwards that they're up against, but relatively what you're going to get.
Yeah.
That the habits they have, the tendencies they have, which foot they're going to kick off, the aggression levels that they're going to show. Like, you understand what that is. With Connolly, you just haven't a clue. I think it's madness not to have him involved.
Just my final point. This is my entire school of thought on this. It doesn't make sense to not bring Diarmuid Connolly into the panel for footballing reasons. I think we can all agree to that. It makes sense to bring in a player like him into any football panel ever. So there has to be non-footballing reasons if he's not going to bring him in. And maybe those non-football, people can make innuendos or whatever out of that. Like, non-footballing reasons could merely be Jim Gavin saying, I just don't want anybody new in the panel for this year. And that could be fine. I just don't think that Jim Gavin has had a look at Diarmuid Connolly and said to himself, I don't like the cut of that guy as a footballer. I don't think this guy is good enough to play for the Dublin panel, because that's just not true. He's good enough for any panel.